what is title insurance? Because this definitely the majority of people and even some of the realtors don't know.
So title insurance is something that protects your interest as an owner, right? So it's not for future loss, like property insurance is for future loss, right? But actual owner's title policy and lender's policies, they're for previous rights, for previous filings. So if when you go to purchase a property, a title company may have missed something or it wasn't part of the public records, and then couple years later down the line, somebody's knocking down your door and they were like, hey, I own this property. And then you're like, no, I own this property, and I have a title policy that says that I do, and I've complied with all of my requirements. Well, now you're basically going to go to your underwriter. They're going to go ahead and assign you an attorney that's basically going to fight for you and make sure that your ownership interest is protected. So basically anything in the past that could have happened that may have been missed because it wasn't recorded properly or something like that, you have a title policy that will protect you. And it's a one-time payment that you make when you purchase a property.
And so that's the only time when you can purchase it. It's during the closing.
Correct.
You cannot come a week after and say, hey, I want to have a title policy.
I mean, you can, but they will need to do the searches and everything like that, and you will need to pay the premium. So you can purchase the property, but there will be a fee that you need to pay, which is fine. But again, it's better to be done at that time, because if there was a time that you own, from the time that you own the property until the time that you decide to purchase, there's something that could come up, you're not going to be protected because it's not going to be included in your policy. So that's why it really is important to get that done right at the time when you're purchasing the property, so that you can avoid all of that possible, liability that could happen from the time that you purchase it to the time that you decide to get the policy.
And we had issue actually one time. I was selling this townhouse. It was in the Pembroke Pines, and the townhouse was great. Everything went great. Inspection went through. There was like no liens on the property, nothing. But then we find out that there was one signature missing from like 1988. It was like about 30 years, ago. And my title company said we cannot close because we need to have that resolved. And the person who sold it back then died. The person who bought it that time also didn't exist. So, and now the only option was going to probate court and to wait for them to clear it. And it all happened because the last seller purchased cash. So he didn't have any lenders who require him to have title insurance. And I guess he was not advised that he better have one.
Yeah.
And we were in the situation when the seller wanted to sell, the buyer wanted to buy, but we couldn't.
Exactly.
And
those situations happen a lot, unfortunately. And so some people are willing to take the risk because they're like, okay, well, I don't want to pay this fee and I'm willing to take the risk. As long as you know what risk you're taking and that's a decision that you make, I mean, that's up to you. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I feel like if people really understand what the policy does and how it protects you, I feel like that's a risk that you shouldn't take. It's just not worth it.
Correct.
When we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of an asset that you want to go and sell in the future, it could be a deed that wasn't signed correctly. Now the deed was invalidated, and again, if you didn't have that title policy, you're going to have to hire attorneys and you're going to have to pay for all of those fees. And I promise you, it's going to cost a lot more than your owner's policy and your time, right? Because now you're going to be fully involved and responsible in resolving that issue. So I just feel like it's a one-time fee that you pay. It covers your asset. So it's a promulgated amount. That's another thing that I want to make sure that we cover, because a lot of people think that they can go from title company to title company to shop around for the title insurance. And fortunately, it's a promulgated amount that is regulated by the state, which means that it cannot vary from title company to title company. So it's based on a particular calculation. So you can Google it. There's calculators, but it's it goes based on a dollar value. So anything up to 100,000 is a certain amount, then liability, and then it goes on from there. So basically, it's a calculation that you can always double check by going online and putting in owner's title insurance calculator, and you have tons of different websites that will show you how to calculate it. So talking about the title insurance, it's a fee that really can't be shopped around.
And now, it also, can it be like, like with the taxes when you're playing with a homestead or something like that, and there are different deduction, is there any option to decrease that title insurance?
So there are a few things that you can do depending on your ownership and the time. So like if you have owned, let's say you're going to go sell your property and you've owned it for 2 years, when you go to resell that property, if you know what you're doing, right, and the other agent knows what they're doing and knows, yes, you actually can get a credit up to, so as long as you haven't owned it for more than 3 years, you actually can provide a copy of your owner's policy to the new buyer, and they can get a credit of up to 30% on their owner's title insurance. That's a hefty savings. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that you can do that. And there are title companies, it's not that they're doing it intentionally, it's just that they don't realize it either. They don't look at the history of how long that previous owner has sold it. So it really is the responsibility and should be the responsibility of the people involved in the transaction from the beginning.
It's a realtor's responsibility. It's a realtor's knowledge when it comes to that.
I agree. And so that's where a professional realtor is very important, right? A professional realtor. And when I say a professional realtor, it could be a professional realtor from day one once they got licensed, right? It has nothing to do with how many years they've been in the business. It's a professional realtor is responsible for aligning themselves with a professional broker so that if they do have any questions that they don't know, they can right. And so they have that person that they can piggyback off of for the knowledge, right? And for the purpose of saving the time. But anyways, going back to the credit. So that's very, very important. Another thing too, there's people that will refinance their properties, right? Especially now, the interest rates are a little bit higher. When the rates start going down, people want to take advantage of the lower interest rates. Well, guess what? You actually get a reissue credit as well for your title insurance once you go to refinance your lender's policy.
So pretty much with a refinance, because it's considering being like a new closing.
Yeah.
So if you don't, if you own the property for more than 3 years, you're going to pay the title insurance from the beginning?
No. So for the life of your ownership. So if the ownership has stayed the same and you're refinancing the property, you can utilize your same policy. There is no time restriction if you're refinancing. The only time restriction that you have is when you're reselling the property, which is 3 years.
So how do you get credit when you refinance then?
So you provide copies of your title insurance to the title company that's going to be doing.
If you don't provide it, then they're going to ask you to.
Yes, I mean, and there's ways. Sometimes people don't get copies of their title policies, right?
Because I don't think they get recorded right away. So that's based on the title company. Like they have the policy, which the person walking away, but it's not realistically filed.
Correct. So basically it's a title commitment first, right? Once the transaction closes, then the title company, part of their post-closing department is they issue an actual title insurance policy,
which comes by mail.
That usually comes by mail along with your original recorded warranty deed. So those are two important documents that you should keep handy. Scan it. Sometimes you can ask the title company, hey, can you send me a copy of the documents via email? Have them in an electronic way, put them on a Google Drive, put them somewhere on a cloud, so that way you can always access those documents. But yeah, so you need to have those policies. If you don't have those policies, you can always contact the title company that did the closing, and you can ask them to provide you with the copies, because they will always have those on file. That's something that title companies do. They have documents on record.
What if the title company is out of business?
Well, so remember, title company is a middle person, right?
Correct.
The title company is not. And we're here to stay. We're here to stay.
You guys have a name already in the industry, and it's been years, and it's been many offices.
Yes, so I want to make that clear. But let's say, God forbid, the title company they dealt with is no longer in business. That's okay, because most of the title, again, I haven't seen a title insurance underwriter go out of business,
because
right?
And that's for 125 years.
Yes,
kind of a long
it's been a very long industry, and it's been. It's good money, absolutely, but they're serving their purpose, right? And so as long as you have copies of the documents, you know who was the underwriter of that file, so you can just call them directly and just tell them, hey, this is you usually will have a title commitment number, and then you can utilize that in order to ask for their policy, and then it will, within a couple of days, they usually send it to you. I've done that for some of the clients that couldn't find their policies, but I knew that they were due a credit. And so obviously we will do whatever we can to make sure that the clients can save money, and we will do the extra legwork of trying to obtain the documents that they may no longer have. And we've had companies, title companies, that have closed doors for whatever reason. You know, they were in there for when the market was hot, and then they just didn't want to do continue and shift with the market, and that's fine. You know, everybody.
We always lose realtors and title companies and lenders.
Listen, it's a cycle. It's a cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're here to stay.
We're here to stay. You guys can go, but we're here to stay.